You've already seen Omega's 2026 watches. You just didn't know it yet. Omega put them there. On the right wrists, at the right events, in front of cameras Omega knew would be watching. The watch on Colman Domingo's wrist at the 2025 Met Gala. The watch on Delroy Lindo's wrist at the 2026 Oscars. Described in Omega's own press release as an unreleased Omega timepiece. The no-date Seamaster that Daniel Craig has been wearing in public since 2024. None of these are accidents. All of them are controlled previews designed to generate exactly the kind of conversation that leads someone to search for a video like this one. So, why are there leaks that are so obvious? That's what this video is about. Now, let's start with the most important thing to understand. How watch leaks actually work, and why Omega's version is different. How watch leaks actually work. Real leaks are accidents. A factory worker takes a photo. A shipping manifest goes public. A patent filing shows up 3 years early. That's how tech works. That's not how watches work. Watch brands don't have a leak culture. They control everything. The supply chain, the press access, the event timing. There is almost no scenario where a major Swiss brand accidentally lets a watch out early. Not Omega, not Rolex, not anyone at that level. So, what are people calling leaks? 3 things, mostly. First, early retailer listings. A watch appears on an authorized dealer's website before the official press release drops. This is usually the retailer's mistake, not the brand's. Omega didn't plan it. The authorized dealer, or AD for short, updated their site too early. It happens. It is not a leak in any meaningful sense. The watch was already shipping. Second, Olympic editions. Omega has been the official timekeeper of the Olympics since 1932. Every game cycle produces new watches. Always. This is not news. This is a schedule. With the recently concluded Milano Cortina Winter Games, you know Omega won't pass up a PR opportunity. Third, and this is the one that matters most, celebrity previews. A famous face wears an unreleased watch at a public event. Photos spread across the watch community. Forums go wild. The brand watches the reaction very carefully. That third type is not a leak at all. It is a test. It is controlled access. It is deliberate. And Omega is exceptionally good at it. Look at the evidence. In 2023, Daniel Craig, Bond himself, wore a white dial Speedmaster months before Omega announced it. In 2024, Craig wore a no-date Seamaster that wasn't in any catalog. The watch community noticed the clean dial immediately. In 2025, actor Colman Domingo wore the Reverse Panda Speedmaster in moonshine gold at the Met Gala. Omega launched that exact watch in January 2026. Then came the 2026 Oscars. Actor Delroy Lindo wore something no one could fully identify. Omega's own press release described it as an unreleased Omega timepiece. They put that in writing, on purpose. An official Omega email to the press announced an unreleased watch. That is not an accident. That is a controlled preview of something coming later in 2026. These previews do 3 things for Omega. They generate attention, without advertising spend. They test community reaction before the brand commits to a full launch. And they create a story the watch has a moment before it has a price tag. That moment is worth more than most marketing campaigns. Now that you understand the system, let's look at what it's already revealed about the Speedmaster. The Speedmaster. What's actually confirmed? The Speedmaster does not change fast. That is a feature, not a flaw. Since 1957, the core moonwatch design has evolved in small steps. The case got refined. The movement improved. The crystal changed. But you can look at a moonwatch from 1969 and a moonwatch from 2026 and know immediately they are the same watch. That consistency is the whole point. The Speedmaster is not trying to be a new watch. It is trying to be the same great watch, made better. This means real Speedmaster news is rare. When it happens, it matters. Here is what actually happened in 2026. The first confirmed release is the Reverse Panda Moonwatch. Omega launched it in January 2026. 2 versions are steel and moonshine gold. The dial is glossy black with white subcounters. It's the inverse of the normal black-on-black layout. The bezel is black ceramic with a white enamel tachymeter scale. The crystal looks like the original Hesalite, but is actually a Hesalite-style sapphire. You get the vintage look with modern scratch resistance. Both versions run the manual wind caliber 3861, the same movement that has been in the Moonwatch for years. Nothing changed inside. Everything changed on the face. This watch was teased 8 months early. Colman Domingo wore the gold version at the 2025 Met Gala. The watch community went immediately. Forums lit up. Speculation ran for weeks. Omega watched all of it, then launched exactly what people expected. The soft preview worked. For the pricing, the steel version sits noticeably above the standard black dial Moonwatch. The premium is for the ceramic bezel and the color scheme, not for any mechanical upgrade. Know that before you decide. The second confirmed piece is the Speedmaster 38 Milano Cortina 2026. This one is for the Winter Olympics in Milan and Cortina. It runs the coaxial caliber 3330, an automatic movement, not manual wind. The case is 38 millimeters, smaller than the Moonwatch. It looks strikingly like the old Speedmaster reduced that Omega made from 1988 to 2010. That watch has a devoted following. This new model is almost certainly testing whether that nostalgia has commercial legs, priced at about $6,800. Not a limited edition. Available at retail. You do not need a dealer relationship to buy it. The signals this sends about the Speedmaster's direction are clear. First, Omega is willing to play with the dial color and contrast. The reverse panda proves the audience accepts departure from black. Second, smaller cases are back on the table. The 38mm is the most wearable Speedmaster available right now. If this model sells, expect more in this size range. Third, the celebrity preview strategy will keep running. You will see future Speedmasters in public months before the press release. Track the watch community, not the gossip, the community. One more confirmed, 2026 Speedmaster, the Moonwatch 321 Platinum. This is not for most people. It uses the historic caliber 321, the original Moonwatch movement from the Apollo era, reissued at considerable expense. The case is platinum. The price reflects both. This is a collector piece. It confirms Omega has not abandoned the high end of the Speedmaster range, even while it tests more accessible formats like the 38mm. The Speedmaster evolves slowly. The Seamaster is where Omega moves fast. The Seamaster, where the real changes are. The Seamaster has always been Omega's most flexible collection. It covers dive watches, dress sport hybrids, Olympic editions, and now a world timer. That range is both its strength and its challenge. Broad enough to reach everyone. Specific enough to mean something? That's the question 2026 is answering. In 2025 and early 2026, Omega made significant moves in the Seamaster line. 3 are worth understanding in detail. The first is the Planet Ocean World Timer. This is the first dive watch in the Planet Ocean's history to carry a travel complication. The case is 45.5mm black ceramic. The dial shows a topographical map of Earth from above the North Pole, a grade 5 titanium surface with laser, ablation detail, and colored varnish. City names run around the outer edge so you can track time zones without doing mental math. 2 color versions. The movement is Master Chronometer certified. What this watch does is specific. It takes the Planet Ocean, a tool watch with serious diving credentials, and makes it a travel instrument. A dive watch that tracks time zones says something about its owner. You are not choosing between adventures. You are doing all of them. That is a lifestyle message. Omega is selling this watch to people who might not dive but want the identity of someone who could. That is an honest luxury strategy, and it works. The second move was the bronze gold Seamaster Diver 300M expansion. Omega's bronze gold alloy is 37.5% gold, mixed with copper, palladium, and silver. The formula eliminates the green verdigris oxidation that plagues standard bronze watches. Instead, it ages to a warm, mellow tone that develops uniquely for each owner. No 2 bronze gold watches look the same after a year of wear. These models drew on design language from the 2020 Bond edition for No Time to Die. The mesh bracelet, the oxalic anodized aluminum bezel ring, the warm tones. This is collector targeted. Bronze gold is a material argument, not a design argument. The watch does not look dramatically different from a standard Seamaster diver. It feels different. It ages differently. That is the point. The third was the Milano Cortina Seamaster. a 37mm dress watch in moonshine gold with a white Grand Few enamel dial. Grand Few enamel is a high-temperature Killine-fired process. It produces a depth of color and a translucency that printed or lacquered dials cannot match. The hexagonal crown references Olympic Seamasters from the past. The movement is master chronometer caliber 8807. Gear Patrol called this Omega's best dress watch in half a century. That is a strong claim, but the argument is real. The combination of moonshine gold, Grand Few enamel, and the hexagonal crown detail is a coherent design statement that Omega's dress category has not had for years. Now, for the unreleased signal. Daniel Craig wore a no-date Seamaster in 2024. The community noticed the dial immediately. Clean, no date window. The date complication is standard on every current Seamaster Diver 300M. Removing it simplifies the dial and brings the watch closer to what many collectors prefer. It would also put a cleaner Seamaster directly in competition with the Rolex Submariner No Date, one of the best-selling luxury watches on Earth. Nothing is confirmed. But Omega knows Craig wears unreleased models on purpose. The No Date Seamaster is coming. The only question is when. Confirmed releases are one story, the wild cards are another. And two of them deserve serious attention. The wild cards. The Railmaster came back in 2025. This matters more than it looks. The Railmaster was part of the original 1957 Omega trilogy alongside the Speedmaster and the Seamaster 300. It was built for railway workers who needed anti-magnetic timekeeping. Railway operations required precision in environments full of electrical equipment that would disrupt normal mechanical movements. Omega built a watch that could handle that. Then the world changed, the need faded, and the Railmaster was discontinued. The community never stopped asking for it. For years, collector forums carried threads about whether Omega would bring it back. The answer is yes. The 2025 Railmaster returns at 38mm with a master chronometer movement and 3 dial references, green, gray, and cream, that reference the original without copying it. What the Railmaster return tells you is that Omega is committed to the 1957 narrative. That was the year the brand launched 3 watches in one go that would each become iconic. The Speedmaster, the Seamaster, 300, the Railmaster. Having all 3 back in the current catalog is not just nostalgia, it is a brand identity statement. We know who we are. We have always known. Here is the proof. The second wildcard is the Constellation. The Delroy Lindo preview at the Oscars is already covered in the next section, but the movement story deserves its own mention here. Early in 2026, Omega launched the Constellation Observatory Collection. The selling point is acoustic resonance testing, a method of verifying movement accuracy through sound rather than just traditional rate measurement. This is technical infrastructure. Omega is building new certification tools, not just new watches. That kind of foundational investment shows up in the product catalog 2 to 5 years later. The observatory testing will almost certainly appear in future Constellation references as a higher tier of performance verification. The movement note is more broadly important. Omega's Meta's master chronometer standard is already more demanding than Swiss chronometer certification at its base level. The acoustic testing is a step beyond that. The brand is building a precision story that could eventually give it a clear technical differentiation from competitors who rely on COSC certification alone. That matters for the collector argument, and it matters for retail pricing power. One final wildcard: a reformed Constellation family. The Lindo watch at the Oscars suggests a clean 50s-inspired dress watch. The observatory program suggests a precision narrative to go with it. Together, they could rebuild the Constellation into what it was originally, Omega's most prestigious line. If that happens, it changes the conversation about where Omega sits in the market. Here is something worth thinking about. If you have been buying Omega based on hype, you may be paying more than you need to for watches that matter less than they appear to. Which Omega do you actually want? Not the one you saw on Instagram. The one you would still want in 10 years. Drop it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious. The Railmaster and the Constellation point to something bigger, a brand actively rebuilding its identity from the ground up. What the wild cards reveal about the brand. There is a pattern across all of these signals. The Railmaster return. The Constellation preview on Delroy Lindo's wrist. The no-date Seamaster. The 38mm Speedmaster. They are not separate decisions. They are parts of the same plan. That plan is about fixing Omega's identity problem. Omega has three iconic lines: the Speedmaster, the Seamaster, the Constellation. For most of the brand's history, all three were central. The Speedmaster went to the moon. The Seamaster was the tool watch for professionals. The Constellation was the flagship dress watch, the most prestigious piece in the range. Somewhere along the way, the Constellation got lost. Today, the Constellation collection has two separate lines that don't clearly connect. The Manhattan-style watch with the integrated bracelet, a design that dates to the 80s, and the Constellation Globemaster, which tries to blend 50s and 70s design cues but ends up looking like a slightly confused Rolex. The result is a line that carries Omega's name but does not carry Omega's energy. The watch on Delroy Lindo's wrist at the Oscars looks like Omega's answer to this problem. Gold case, fine mesh bracelet, clean dial. A design that references the 50s Constellation rather than trying to modernize the Manhattan. Simple, intentional, confident. If Omega relaunches the Constellation as a genuine flagship dress watch, that is a major brand move. It fills a gap that Omega has had for years, and it would make the three-line structure of Speedmaster, Seamaster, Constellation meaningful again instead of theoretical. The Railmaster reinforces the same logic. Omega's strongest stories are old ones. The 1957 Trio, the NASA certification, the Olympic timing heritage. The brand is at its best when it commits to those stories and builds from them rather than inventing new identities. The Railmaster is not a new watch. It is a recovered one. Recovered right means stronger than invented new. Both signals point the same direction. Omega is going back to what it was before it tried to be everything. A precision instrument brand with a clear identity and iconic lines that each mean something specific. The Speedmaster for space and sport. The Seamaster for water and adventure. The Constellation for precision and elegance. Simple. It took them a while to get back here. The 2026 release calendar suggests they are finally arriving. So why is this happening? Why Omega is doing this? Omega fell from 3rd to 5th in global watch brand rankings between 2024 and 2025. The secondary market for its flagship watches shows consistent gray market discounts of 25 to 30% below retail. Those are not signs of a brand at peak strength. What Omega is doing with its release strategy in 2026 is trying to rebuild something, not sales volume. Swatch Group does not need help moving watches. Omega is trying to rebuild desire. The specific, earned desire that makes people wait for a watch instead of just finding it discounted online. The soft launch strategy is part of this. When Colman Domingo wore the reverse panda at the Met Gala, Omega was not marketing to everyone. It was marketing to the people who noticed. The watch community. The collectors. The people who drive the conversation that eventually reaches the mainstream buyer. If those people get excited, the product has a chance. If they shrug, the launch will be quiet. This matters because Omega's community had been quiet for a while. The post-pandemic hype years inflated demand for everything. When that hype corrected, Omega felt it more than brands like Rolex and Patek because Omega's demand was more dependent on hype and less on genuine scarcity. The drop from 3rd to 5th in rankings reflects that. The solution is not a louder marketing campaign. The solution is rebuilding genuine collector interest from the inside out. The material innovation strategy is also part of this. Bronze gold, meteorite dials, ceramic cases with new finishing processes. You cannot discount material exclusivity the way you can discount a standard steel watch. If your dial contains iron meteorite formed in space over millions of years, that is a story no gray market dealer can undercut. Omega knows this. Unique materials create reasons to pay retail price. The size shift matters too. The 38mm Speedmaster test. The 37mm Seamaster dress watch. Omega built its name on large, bold sport watches. The market has moved towards smaller cases. Omega is following without making an announcement about following. That is smart. You do not want to say, "We were wrong about size." You just quietly start releasing smaller watches and see what happens. One line captures the whole approach. Omega is not chasing attention right now. It is trying to control perception. That is harder. It takes longer. But if the goal is to close the gap with Rolex over a decade, not a quarter, it is the right move. And here is what most people get completely wrong about all of this. Before we move on to the next part, let me tell you this. Most people don't realize this, but buying a watch the wrong way can cost you thousands, and you won't even notice it until it's too late. You walk into a store or browse online, and everything looks the same, but behind the scenes, there's a system. Prices aren't always fair, availability is controlled, and one bad decision can leave you overpaying for something that doesn't even hold its value. That's why I created a complete free insider guide to buying watches. Inside, you'll find the best watches to buy, the watches to avoid, and how to choose a watch that actually fits your style and budget long-term. The goal is simple. I'll help you stop guessing and start buying smart. You'll find the free guide in the pinned comment and description. Now, let's move on to the next part, what most people get wrong. Not every new Omega model is a leak. Not every design change is important. Most people treat every release as equally significant. They are not. This confusion costs people money and wastes their time. Here is a simple framework. Ask one question about any new Omega release. Does this change what the watch is, or does it only change how the watch looks? If it changes what the watch is, that is a real signal. Pay attention. If it only changes how the watch looks, that is noise. You can notice it. You do not need to react to it. Apply this to 2025 and 2026, and it gets very clear. The Reverse Panda Moonwatch is noise with a signal inside. The dial color is noise. The ceramic bezel with white enamel tachymeter is a signal. It is a different construction from the black ceramic bezel. The fact that Omega now offers the Moonwatch with this bezel type tells you something about where the design language is going. The bronze gold Seamaster models is pure signal. A proprietary alloy with unique aging properties. Not available from any competitor. Not available at lower prices on the gray market. This is material innovation with a real reason to exist. The Milano Cortina editions is just noise. Expected, scheduled. The Winter Olympics happen every 2 years. Omega makes a watch. This is not news. Buy one if you want it. Do not treat it as a strategic indicator. The Railmaster returning is signal. A brand does not bring back a deadline without a reason. The reason here is a strategic commitment to the 1957 trilogy narrative. Expect the 1957 storytelling to expand. The no-date Seamaster, worn by Daniel Craig in 2024, is a bit confusing, but we are leaning towards it being a possible signal. A clean Seamaster dial without the date window would be a meaningful departure from the current catalog. It would also compete more directly with the Rolex Submariner No Date, which is one of the most popular watches in the world. If this launches, it is not a small decision. The real changes at Omega are slow. They build for years before they arrive. The Constellation Observatory acoustic testing program that launched in early 2026 is 3 to 5 years of engineering work. The material science behind bronze gold took years. The Hesalite-style sapphire crystal on the Reverse Panda is a manufacturing decision that required significant development time. Watch the slow moves. Those are the ones that matter. So, what does all of this mean for you if you are thinking about buying Omega in 2026? What this means for buyers. Do not chase the soft launch hype. That is the first rule. When a watch appears on a celebrity wrist at a major event, and the internet lights up, related secondary market prices often move right away. People buy the current version of a watch because they think the upcoming version will make it more valuable. Sometimes this is true, usually it is not. The Reverse Panda Moonwatch launched in January 2026. The day it was announced, the standard black dial Moonwatch saw upticks in secondary market activity from people thinking the new dial would create scarcity for the old one. It didn't. Omega did not stop making the black dial. The gray market price for the standard Moonwatch barely moved. The buyers who reacted to the announcement paid a premium for nothing. Wait for the full launch. Wait for the hands-on reviews from people who have actually worn the watch. Wait for the gray market price to settle over 6 to 8 weeks. Then decide. On the specific 2026 releases, the Reverse Panda Moonwatch is a good watch. The design is clean. The black and white contrast is sharper in person than in photos. But it sits 13% above the white dial Moonwatch in some markets. That premium buys you a color scheme, not a different watch. Ask yourself honestly whether the aesthetic difference is worth that number to you specifically. The Speedmaster 38 Milano Cortina is a stronger value argument, $6,800, not limited. Available at retail without a dealer relationship or purchase history requirement. Smaller case. Moonwatch adjacent design. If you want a Speedmaster that wears closer to 38 millimeters and you do not want to pay Moonwatch prices for a manual wind movement, this watch deserves serious consideration. The Seamaster Diver 300 meters remains the best value Omega makes at scale. The standard steel reference trades at roughly 20 to 25% below retail on gray market platforms. At that price, you own a Meta's certified master chronometer. That is a third-party verified accuracy standard that the Rolex Submariner does not carry. In pure performance terms, the Omega is the better buy at the numbers. Not every buyer cares about that. But if you do, the math is not close. The bronze gold models are for a different kind of buyer. The material is genuinely exclusive. The patina development is individual. Your watch will age differently from every other bronze gold Seamaster. If that story appeals to you and the price works, these are worth owning. If you are buying for resale or for investment, avoid them. Unique materials do not always translate to strong secondary values. One final rule. If you find yourself wanting to buy a watch because you saw it on someone famous, stop. That is not a reason. That is a reaction. Omega wants your reaction. Do not give it to them cheaply. Learn what the watch actually does. Understand where it fits in the catalog, then decide whether it belongs on your wrist. Here is what a smart purchase looks like in practice. You see the Reverse Panda Moonwatch on Colman Domingo at the Met Gala in May 2025. You notice it. You bookmark it. You do not buy the existing black dial Moonwatch as a hedge. You wait. In January 2026, Omega launches the Reverse Panda. You read 3 hands-on reviews. You check the gray market price at launch, and again 6 weeks later. You visit an authorized boutique and handle the watch. You compare the price to the standard black dial and ask yourself honestly if the ceramic bezel and color scheme are worth the difference to you. If yes, you buy. If not, you move on. That process takes 3 months and saves you from decisions made in 20 minutes of hype. It is not complicated. It just requires patience that most buyers don't think they have until they've made one expensive, impulsive purchase and learned the lesson the hard way. Buy signals. Ignore noise. Wait for hands-on reviews. Check gray market pricing before deciding on retail. Build a boutique relationship if you want access to limited references. That is the whole strategy. Nothing in it requires urgency. Urgency is what hype campaigns sell. You are not buying urgency. You are buying a watch. Most of what you are seeing online is not leaking. It is signaling. Omega is telling you where it's going. It is doing it slowly. It is doing it through the right people at the right events. And it is paying very close attention to who notices. But you should understand the game before you play it. The soft launch creates emotional momentum. The hype builds before you can assess the watch properly. Secondary market prices move before you have your hands on the piece. That is the moment Omega wants you to buy. Excited before you've thought it through. The buyer who knows what is real has a different experience. That buyer is the smart one. And the gap between a smart buyer and an emotional one is not intelligence. It is information. You now have the information. Use it. But there are people who genuinely can afford to spend money and chase hype. If you are one of those people, by all means, chase hype. But after 2 months, would you think it's worth it? Watch the wrists of Omega ambassadors at the next major event. The next watch is already out there. You just have to know where to look. If you want to go deeper on how Omega's distribution is changing, fewer dealers, more boutiques, and what that means for where you buy, like this video and subscribe. We have a video on the distribution strategy. The release strategy and the distribution strategy is the same. Understanding both changes how you buy.